Ancestors, please open the womb of my mind, the womb of my heart, and the womb of my sacred seat. May my voice speak words of healing and blessings. May I learn to discipline my mind and my tongue. And may I remember to use my words to also reach out to the ancestors, to talk, plan, grow, and learn. May my hands spread healing to myself, my womb, and my community. And may my feet continue to walk the path of the ancestors. Good morning. I'm so glad we are here and have made it together. Excuse my little, I think you can see my lotion. I should move it. My lotion on the floor for some reason. That was from Filthy Cosmetics, actually. A Blitzstone shop. All right, so today we are going to be continuing Gateway 1, Sacred Words. We are going to be talking about the sacred silence, the art of not talking, of listening, of communicating without your words, of preserving them within you, and only, and releasing them in different ways, such as womb journals, meditations. You can still do your video recordings to, assist your sacred words. But this is going to be a week of pulling back, of thinking before we speak, and really paying attention to our words and making that a priority for ourselves as the week goes through. We also, I'm going to be reading a little bit out of Jambalaya by Louisa Teach. This is the Natural Woman's book. I really loved this book when I first got it. It's full of so much wisdom, Yoruban wisdom mostly, but she is trained, I do believe, in root working hoodoo traditions, but I want to say that her main works with the Orisha. So she's a little, some of her stuff is, not quite what we do in this circle, but I still feel like, there are some universalities to a lot of the African traditional religions, and ancestral veneration just happens to be one of them. And she does have a little section in here, which I've marked with my little receipts, in which she talks about ancestral veneration. So I thought that would be a really wonderful, way to get into this. And she also had a piece on nature like nature worship or something like that in here, but we'll see. But anyways, full disclosure, however, I want to say 5 years ago, it was like 5 years ago, Louisa T, participated in TERF activities, anti-trans activities, which, it was sad because a lot of people held her in a lot of, high esteem. And I want to say, when I say she participated, she made a post, and then she also participated in an anthology where she was not necessarily as violent, but a bunch of other people in that anthology were saying some crazy ass shit. So, a lot of people were like, okay, but you put your name in that. So that's where this controversy came from. But it is, we don't have very much, we don't have very many people who wrote books. We don't have very much information. So this is still a very valuable resource. But I hope in, the next 50 years, we improve, update as always. The classics shouldn't always be the classics forever. So yes, that is all we have. Oh, and this morning we're going to be doing the strength and circulation Womb Yoga Flow. And we're going to do it to the song that I had just put up on Instagram. That song has like a whole beginning part in which, you know, she makes you think about the devastation of words, the same way we thought about we had to address the devastation of the womb in that one womb song. So this one, she kind of does a similar thing where she addresses all of the ways in which we've kind of failed each other and ourselves with our words, and you know, urges us to think about it, or not say that this particular instance exactly happened to you, but acknowledge how, you know, something similar has happened to you, or even you've done this to somebody else. You have, you know, degraded somebody over something. You have, you know, perpetuated some of the like toxic ideals and stereotypes and beliefs, you know. I think, you know, that was a lot of people's journey, was realizing how they've been complicit and how they need to heal from that. So that all has to do with sacred words, which is why I'm going to go ahead and play that song. The name of the song is Hekawu. Let me see, it's Hekau. And that word means like, it's like word of power in ancient Egypt. So, you know, you could say that at the end of your prayer, same as people say Hetepu, or some people say Ashe. You know, that means like this, you know, is of importance. So with Hekawu, it would be giving power to the words that you've just spoken, or the words that, you know, you're going to speak. So just follow along with my movements. We're starting in the fetus.
You ain't nothing, you ain't never been nothing, and you ain't never gonna be nothing. I brought you into this world and I'll take you out. Girl, you know you ugly, so you might as well just cultivate your mind. She sure is pretty to be so black. You gotta do something with that nappy head. Where do you think you're going looking like that? Come on, look at this here stove so I can put a pressing. Why'd you hurt me so bad? Please help us with our words. Here goes divine creator. Here comes assist me. Here comes air speaking. Here comes echo. Echo, may my words echo, be anointed. Echo, may my words echo my damaged soul. Echo, divine mother. Assist me. That's right. Words of power. Words that heal. Words that transform. And words that build. Help me guard my words. So more than passes my lips. And no destruction.
We're going to our back, feet in together.
Comes from my speech.
Hold your womb.
Echo, 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 echo. If my words show me to be out of divine right order, may my mind and my mouth be clear. May my words be lotus blossoms that encourage all the souls I meet to reach a greater height. May my words speak with your breath and sing.
You're rolling over, and you're doing the same thing on the other side with your belly down this time, feet together.
May goodness and mercy follow me all the days of my life. May goodness and mercy follow me all the days of my life. May goodness and mercy follow me through all the days of
Lower yourself,
my
lay flat,
life.
relax.
Divine Creator, place words upon my lips that make my voice sacred, may goodness and mercy follow me all the days of
Rise
my life.
to the snake. Your legs are out.
And mercy follow me through all the days of my life. May goodness and mercy follow me through all the days of my life.
Let's rise into a seating position.
I am asked
the Great Mother. I come forth, I shine. I go in.
We're going
and
to
I come
get
down.
into our mesh
My
connect.
seat is on the
Essentially the
throne. I
splits
sit
forward.
in the
Let yourself stretch gently though.
I have commanded myself. I rule it by my mouth, speaking and in silence. I maintain an exact balance, season from season. What is in the divine, I am one, coming from the Almighty One.
Let's rise into a womb universal note.
My seat is on my throne, and I shall not.
Can end with our squat. And finish seated. There's like nothing like womb yoga. I mean, I always feel so good after I do it. I'm always like, let's just spend the whole morning doing womb yoga. But no, I have a life. I have kids now. Can't do shit like that. All right. Let me see. First, I will make sure I get rid of all these things up here. Yeah, well, yoga is something that that you really have to practice. It is really hard. That's what I really like about womb yoga is that it's not about perfecting the moves. It's about really feeling your body, really connecting with yourself, really learning, how to move. And that's something that I think a lot of us don't get as much practice at as we would like. And then, there's just that act of just circulating and vibing with yourself and the music and the atmosphere, your sacred dress. When I did the womb yoga practitioner training with Queen, we dressed in white, and it was just such a sacred experience to just be a part of a yoga experience that was for just for that self growth and that connection with other people who were trying to be spiritual in your way, or in a way that was a little more familiar to you. I think like yoga, a lot of the times, like when I look up yoga on YouTube, I'm like disconnecting. But having something like womb yoga, I think really has been a powerful tool, at least for me, and I know for a lot of other people who have started the practice. Let me see. Roll this little blanket up since we're all done. Open to the prayer for the gateway. Figure out where I put the music, if I may. Oh, it's right here. I try and always play the music just because I know my kids are prone to screaming at any moment, to let it out. That was too much, sorry. We pour in honor of Sankofa, and we answer with Ashe. We call to the ancestors, both known and unknown, to assist us in speaking Hekawu, words of power. May our words be anointed. May our words not damage a soul. Ancestors, help us to speak words that heal, words that empower, words that build, words that transform. Help us guard our words so no venom passes our lips and no destruction results from our speech. Rather, may our words impart light to souls who are seeking your face. If my words show me to be out of divine right order, may my mind and mouth be cleansed. Help us to not speak words that break down the divine in us or in our sisters or our brothers, our mates, our children, our elders, or our ancestors. Divine ancestors, place words upon our lips that make our voice disperse sacred medicine. May our words be lotus blossoms that encourage all the souls that we meet to reach for greater heights. May our words speak with your breath and sing your sweet song of life. Because of the words and the evolved tones that we utter, may goodness follow us all of the days of our lives. Ashe. We'll now take a moment of silence to call personally by name or by energy any ancestors that we would like to continue helping us or join us in our journey of self-healing, healing ourselves and healing the generations before and that are to come. Ashe. So here is the check-in. How did you do last week? Just trying to pay attention to your words. For me, I will say I got into vicious cycles with myself this last week when it came to words. I was like, it's like I would tell myself like I was gonna do better at something or like not say something, not be like snappy or like on edge or whatever, and then like things occur in real time and then I like react automatically and then I'm like beating myself up because I like reacting automatically and like not pausing how I'm supposed to be pausing this week. Sacred words is definitely one of my struggle gateways. Sacred word and sacred space are definitely some of my struggle gateways, in the sense that, I struggle. I just some gateways just come easier than other gateways. And it's like not even to say that you're like the best. It's just like, just some concepts just come better. So yeah, sacred words is definitely one that like my first journey, I was a lot more mean about myself. I'll say the vicious cycle last week, like when I say vicious cycle, it's a lot different than my vicious cycle years ago. So I know I've improved. But still, I was feeling really down about myself, but I was like, that's not really what the journey is about. Like the journey is about progress, is about, applying new things and like, okay, so what I've been doing hasn't been working the last week. So what are different things that I can do to change it? Anyways, usually when I go through this gateway, I have breath of life on me, which is Queen Afua's she has like a little essential oil concoction that's like it's like a little bit minty, and and it just opens up the senses. I'm sure there's eucalyptus in there too. It just like, when you're sick, that stuff is the bomb. You just like put it in your throat, and then all of a sudden everything's open. It's like you can breathe, you know what I mean? And so I love that stuff when I'm doing like fire breathing, when I'm doing, basically anything. I really love that stuff. Like I'll just put it on my tongue, but especially for like prayer, for like, oh, my words are like out of control, I would always put a drop of that on my tongue, just to, it's like a reminder. It's one of those little reminders, like we've been talking about, where you can maybe wear a special necklace or a neck scarf or veil, or there's so many different little reminders. You can use henna or hagwa to dye your fingers or your hands, to help also as a sacred reminder. I'm going to do that either today or tomorrow, depending on what my schedule ends up looking like. But yeah, like my plan is to take it, just one step at a time, and find little things that I can apply to myself and keep myself in a positive upward spiral when it comes to healing my sacred words and speaking words of healing, not only to others but to myself, when I don't do like as good as I know I can. Let's see. So the last time we talked about, making our words sacred. This time we're on pages 150 and 151 of the book. Oh, actually, wait a second. We were supposed to read Louise Satish first. Don't let me get distracted, y'all. Don't let me get so distracted. No, I'm kidding. And before we open this, we did not do our what's it called? Our fire breathing. So we're gonna go ahead and do that right now. We have 200. We're holding our womb. When we breathe in, our stomach goes out. When we breathe out, our stomach goes in. Don't pass out. Stop if you're feeling it. And we'll get all that oxygen flowing to our brains and ready to connect spiritually with these messages and take them to the next level in our minds. Take our notes or jot down thoughts in the womb journal that speak to us in our own situation. So it's 3 cleansing breaths. So fire breathing is something that you should be practicing daily, especially if you're going to be trying to build up with the group. If you're finding that it's really hard to keep up, then yeah, you should just practice more. It's just a matter of building up your lung area. Like there's so many different things that go into it that could be making you struggle. For example, make sure your posture is correct. A lot of people, they, because they're so used to this, they're just not used to filling up their lungs. You know what I mean? So it just feels like it's a really difficult thing to do, when it's like, oh, you're like, not only am I filling up my lungs, but I'm doing it like 50, 100, 200 times. It's like you need to build this up. Definitely, it's a skill to build up. And yeah, strengthen all this. Very important. So yes, we're starting with jambalaya. If you happen to have this page, we are at page 68. And 69 is technically where I'm starting, but basically I wanted to read a little poem that was on page. This poem, I looked it up. It was by someone named Barajo Diop, Birago Diop. He was I want to say Senegalese poet. Yes, Senegalese poet. And so yes, this common theme of ancestral veneration, which I'm not the hugest fan of Christian books, but a lot of people, when you go to read the African Christian books, they have entire sections on ancestral reverence or venerational practices or nature spirits, you know what I mean? Which is totally not Christian and not really adhering to that at all. But it's like the word usage, it's not called witchcraft there, just like it really wasn't called witchcraft here. We all call it kind of the craft, and it all kind of melds in here, the year 2019, 2018, 2017, everything's kind of started to it's the way it naturally goes, like when cultures meet, they take what the other one knows, they create a new culture. It's not this one, it's not that one, it's something different. And so that's kind of the chain of events that occurs in human history. But our ancestors called it working roots, or like throwing bones, throwing tricks, working the Bible, working the earth. You know what I mean? They would have never called it witchcraft. Working the earth. You know what I mean? They would have never called it witchcraft, or if the word witch was used, which is why I totally don't care, is they would say like witch doctor, right? So the words do kind of tend to all come together because we're all like fucking speaking English and speaking whatever, all these colonized languages that also stole from our indigenous languages and our indigenous customs. So at any rate, the concept that even Christianized Black people still hold so many of these ancient beliefs of ancestral veneration. Even here, they'll be like, you're a devil, but we speak in tongues. White people they were not doing all that before we got here. The stomp, dancing around, now you can go to white people churches, they flag waving and dancing in the aisles and doing whatever, but they definitely did not do that before we did that. You know what I mean? Before, and that was something that was brought, that stomping and shouting, the call and response, directly from Africa, so I think they're arguing. He's not happy with her. We'll keep our ears on it. All right, so the poem by, I don't even know if I'm saying his name, by Barajo Diop. Those who are dead are never gone. They are there in the thickening shadow. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the tree that rustles. They are in the wood that groans. They're in the water that sleeps. They're in the huts. They're in the crowd. The dead are not dead. Those who are dead are never gone. They are in the breast of the woman. They are in the child who is wailing. and in the firebrand that flames. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the fire that is dying. They are in the grasses that weep. They are in the whimpering rocks. They are in the forest. They are in the house. The dead are not dead. Death and reincarnation. We're on to Louisa Tisha's words. Africans believe that those who go before us make us what we are. Accordingly, ancestor reverence holds an important place in the African belief system. Through reverence for them, we recognize our origins and ensure the spiritual and physical continuity of the human race. Obviously, ancestors influence human life through hereditary and physical and personality traits. But in the African view, they continue to exist and create in the spirit world. Not only does this energy find a home in the wood that groans, but at the proper time and under the right circumstances, they can be reborn. So then she goes briefly into the Dahomean spiritual, belief system, which is very interesting if you get this book, but unfortunately it's just like a bunch of words, and I like when I read this I had to draw what was saying. It's like she said this and then that's within this, and when I drew it was really beautiful to look at. So anyways, I encourage you to look at the Dahomey belief system on your own. But we're on to start on page 69 where she starts talking about the Egungun. Egungun or Egun is the Yoruba word used to describe those souls or intelligences who have moved beyond the physical body. The Eguns who are existing at another level within the creative energy are treated with loving reverence. So if you haven't guessed right now, Egun means ancestors. They are the spirits that have gone on to the other realm, who we revere, hold in high esteem, help us in our everyday lives, and who, we need help, but we also talk to them, keep them updated on our thoughts and dreams, try and have like that conversation where you're just speaking out loud and then you kind of realize what it is you have to do or how it is you should handle that situation. I think, the thing I really like about the ancestors is, there are times where, of course, have to be super proper and respectful, come at the situation with respect, and then there's also that daily connection where you get to just speak casually and be yourself, because you're speaking with family. So she continues on. They, like the Egyptian ancestors, are given honorable burials and are provided with the tools that they need to conduct meaningful work in the spirit world. That part actually really made me just think when she said they, like the Egyptian ancestors, are given an honorable burial and provided with tools they need to conduct meaningful work in the spirit world. Okay, so you know how Egyptians, they had their tombs and everything. Here in America, for a while, we could not, this is some random Black history, y'all. We could not get buried, in the cemeteries. We were also not allowed to have headstones. There's just a lot of little rules that it's like, I'm not even sure if it was like a law exactly, or if it was just you were systematically kept out. It was like not even within a realm of possibilities. But at any rate, because of this, that is what a lot of those ugly jugs, face jugs were used for. They would make the face really ugly so that the spirit would, it would scare away any demons, evil entities, malaligned spirits who would perhaps try and thwart the soul of their ancestor from reaching heaven, the spirit realm, wherever. So they would make this ugly jug, and then they would put inside of it several effects that were highly important to that recently deceased individual. So, maybe whatever their work was, whatever was highly important to them spiritually, those little effects. So it just made me think, of giving those little things that help the other person or aid them in the afterworld. They did it in Yoruba, they did it in Egypt, ancient Egypt, and they did it, 150 years ago, 200 years ago. And here we are still, following this same line of tradition. Very powerful. So They receive offerings of food. Special dishes are cooked for the ancestors, sometimes elaborate, sometimes simple, depending on the descendants' means. So that's why I don't even have it in here. That's why I was talking to you guys about, but I did make the post on Patreon about the dried grains. You know, that's that simple. That's that I kept it on my altar and can use it, and it doesn't go bad. It doesn't go rancid. It's a nice dry mix that has been stirred and blessed by me, and with my, energy towards, that building of the growth of my ancestors, towards my, bloodline, my love of my bloodline, whatever it is that, the words that you're speaking, the words of power you're speaking over it, and you're stirring it. So that's like one of the simpler things. Other simple concoctions of like for offering would just be a tea you can make yourself, like an herbal tea. You can make a tea that your ancestors liked, or coffee. A lot of ancestors like coffee. Other offerings, I know my mother-in-law used to smoke, a particular brand of cigarettes. So we do, if needed, go get her some cigarettes, which, you would just place those on the altar as well. If you have kids, be careful. Candy. There's like a lot of different things and it kind of also depends on how well you knew that ancestor. Like if you knew, Aunt Mabel never said no to cheesecake, you know what I mean? Like that could be something that you kind of whip out when you got, you have something to do. So that's what they mean. Like it doesn't have to be elaborate every time, especially if you don't have it like that. Your ancestors are not going to be like, spend the last $30 on like an elaborate spread and see where it gets you. Use, discretion on what you can give, but, do give accordingly. Beautiful songs and undulated dances are done in their honor. They are well spoken of and respected. So singing songs with your ancestors, for your ancestors, you can make them up. You can try and find some. Dancing, especially, if you can find time on the full moon or something, and go somewhere to, dance maybe with a group of friends. That is another way to honor the ancestors, that movement, that sacred movement. They are well spoken of, respected. It is important in African society to remember the names and the deeds of one's ancestors. Children are named after them, of course, and they hold a place of affection in the hearts of their descendants. Elaborate annual rites are held in their honor, which the whole village attends. People dress up in costumes, reenact the stories of their ancestors using carved masks, special props, and many musical instruments. The ancestors are the subject of African theater. In exchange for this loving reverence, they offer protection, wisdom, and assistance to those who revere them. And then this part is, I don't think it necessarily applies to the people who would be at this sister circle, just because I think once you've clicked enough buttons to get here, you know what we're about. But yeah, this is for the people who maybe are a little uncomfortable with this idea of ancestor reverence. She says, are you wincing a little? Does the idea of the living dead scare you? Yes? Then turn off the television set. Forget the movies, Night of the Living Dead, Curse of the Undead, and so on, ad nauseum. We're not talking about that. Euro-America reveres those who exhibit great merit, including famous criminals, too. If African ancestor reverence scares you, then you must also fear national holidays, such as Washington's birthday. You must shiver every time you view a performance of the works of William Shakespeare or Lillian Hellman. These safe, honorable practices are merely watered down ancestor reverence rites. And I do actually agree with that when she's talking about like, I think it's a lot deeper than just saying like, white people revere these criminals often. I mean, how many Bundy videos are there? And it's like come to find out he was not a woman's man. He was not actually that cute. He was not actually smart. He was not all these things that, they placed on this criminal who would murder women. He's a degenerate. And yet here we are. And Zac Efron is playing Bundy in a new video, and a new documentary came out on Netflix. And, it goes beyond just like, oh, they really like they think he's got a swell spirit. They're venerating these people. They're putting energy into that. They're, that's the culture here is to, it's the same with really wealthy people who like hoard tons of money. You'll have people living on the streets here in America who will go to bat for them and their right to hoard massive amounts. And they love to go on about like the robber barons and all the amazing things they did, and the Industrial Revolution, and all those wonderful things that are going on and on about. Like they failed to give the whole picture, in which most people were largely being failed. So I mean, like, is it a sad spiritual practice? Their forms of ancestral veneration are often very negative. Christopher Columbus, right? Like he is literally was genocide, child rape. Like he was being so nasty to the kids that they had to write back to the queen, and they were like, look, we all being nasty out here, but Chris is so nasty that somebody needs to come take this fool and bring him back to jail, which is what they did. The like Queen of Spain had to go there and get Columbus and bring his ass back to jail because he was that terrible of a human being. He was being that gross and like just like not even helpful to the cause anymore. It was just all that self-gluttony. Anyways, that's somebody who has a holiday. In fact, such a big holiday that we don't even go to work. You know what I mean? That we all have to learn little poems as kids and build this character up and spiritually put energy down, on and on and on. And like, all these people are painted as nice, so like when she's talking about the ancestral veneration practices, I think it's so important to remember that like we also have to be giving power to our stories, to our ancestors, to our greatness, to our futures, and not be so constantly wrapped up in, giving all this energy to these other people's holidays and these other people's whatever it is they're trying to, achieve through venerating Christopher Columbus. All right, so she says, so yeah, and then she also puts safe in quotation marks because it's so true. So automatically, whiter things are considered safer. Wiccan, especially, I would say, is a huge example of that. I feel like when the Wiccan community created itself, its number one priority was to be like, but we're not associated with any of them. We do harm to none, and blessed be 3 rules of 3. If it comes back to you, it comes back to me. And like that was their way of making theirs safe. It was a safe, honorable practice of nature veneration. It's safe to disassociate yourself with, the African stuff. And if it's not associated with African, for example, Catholic people eating the symbolic flesh and blood, but that's a safe practice because it's, white, it's been spread around, it's been diluted to the point where people feel like, oh, it's just a wafer, and like it's about connecting with Jesus, and Jesus is the like nicest guy and all those things. So those are considered safe practices because people are just so used to them. So even if someone's starting to do something kind of strange, if it's attached to that Abrahamic Christianity label, it's often perceived as safer or perceived as less dangerous or with less evil intent, even though they've killed way more people than anybody who's ever done voodoo, right? Like you can find a couple random articles of like people when voodoo goes wrong or when hoodoo goes wrong, but like you can find volumes on when Christianity goes the fuck wrong. You know what I mean? Like volumes on volumes. You could fill rooms, a house with the books of content of all those times. But people don't, it's that concept of that safe versus the deviance. And Black people have at large, our culture, our way of life, our skin, everything, hair, everything has been considered a form of deviance, which is why people are trying to push us into a box, get us to do different things, degrade, whatever it is we're doing, because it's perceived with this level of distrust just automatically. And we do it to ourselves, which is why she had to write it in here. Sadly, we do that to ourselves. So let's see if we can wrap this up. We're almost to the end. For the Igbo of Nigeria, Oh, wait, sorry. She says, I almost skipped one. Conversely, because the practice is that of reverence, we're not obliged to revere those whose earthly conduct was detrimental to the community. Among West African people, certain ancestors are not revered, or else measures are taken to reinstate them into a place of honor. So, yes, helping, there is not this obligation, like if you're somebody was a molester, there's literally no reason to ever reach out to their spirit, and in fact put those walls up immediately and be done with the situation. Erase it. You have no obligation ever to be in any contact with that spirit, and if you make it clear that that's not safe for you, your other ancestors will make sure you're not going to be, it's not going to happen. There's no need to be going after ancestors who, venerating ancestors who were slave owners, like, and venerating ancestors who, abandoned you at birth, or all those little things that, whatever personal reason you have, there's no reason to do that. Now, when she said we're reinstated to a place of honor, there are times when somebody, I don't know. I can't think of an example. Maybe if somebody was like addicted to drugs or something, and but they had done so well and the fall was so swift. I don't know. Like there's just so many like little nuanced reasons why you would feel in your heart this ancestor would still be somebody that I need to connect with. I was that close with them. They inspired me that much. But you need to take the proper steps to, there are different rites ceremonies. I forget what it's called. It's like the raising. There's like ways to honor our ancestors and allow them to transition, especially if you're having an ancestor who is like bothering you because they haven't really transitioned. You know what I mean? Like that is also like, that's not somebody you should be reaching out to help you. That's somebody that you should be trying to help. Or, if it's too big for you, finding somebody who can help you. He's so upset with her. I'm gonna go see them in a second. I'll be right back, y'all. Here, let me turn on a Sacred Woman song. He's so upset. Oh wow, I moved all my stuff right in front of the door, of course. All right, so for the Igbo of Nigeria, the manner of death and birth is also a determining factor. For example, suicides, those who die by drowning, are buried near a river. It's believed that the river will help cleanse their souls. Those who die at an early age or of ill health are called ogbanje, repeaters. They're born over and over again until they can earn an honorable death. A set of twins or children born feet first and or with teeth were considered taboo. They were seen as improper reincarnations due to dishonorable deaths, which isn't true for all African, even West African societies. My own twins, Taiwo and Kehinde, that's a traditional African twin name. Taiwo is the firstborn, Kehinde is the secondborn. And in that society, you know, or in that, not only that's several African societies, you can go to their tribes and they have just so many sets of twins because they saw it as honorable, as, you know, a blessing, as like this really cool thing. So because they were so consistent with, you know, basically honoring twins and marrying people with twins and continuing this tradition of twins, their communities are super inundated with twins, and the trait of releasing two eggs is in the womb is what occurs for them, you know. So they think that that is a huge reason why Black women in America are prone to having twins and triplets and multiples, and just because it's a trait, you know. We were taken from West Africa, and a lot of West African societies honored twins and wombs that produced them. Let's see. The worst curse that can be hailed against an Igbo. Oh, so that's what it. I was like the Igbo of Nigeria. It was a misspelling. It's the Igbo. I was like, wow, I need to look that up. Against an Igbo is, may you not be reborn in human form. Those carrying this curse in another life become bush creatures, that is, animals who sometimes take human form. Among the Yoruba, there is the dreaded Abiku, the forest spirit who is repeatedly born to a woman, then dies as an infant. Is this crib death? This recurrence is done primarily to torture the mother. These spirits are not revered. The Fawn of Dahomey also believe in the Towio, the children of mortals and divine beings. So, if there's a Nazi, a slaver, or a homicidal maniac in your family bloodline, relax. Later this chapter, I will also discuss the means for deciding who is revered and how they are addressed. Let's take this matter a step further. If you accept the scientific view that humans evolved from apes, then you must ask, where did the first humans appear? If you've spent any minimal amount of time with the works of the anthropologist Louise Leakey, you know the answer is Africa. Now we must seize the opportunity to cleanse ourselves out of the dangerous evil racism. What's funny about her saying this is she wrote this book in like the 80s. So, you know, like back then, people were still, you know, very upset with the idea that we all came from Africa. And what was I going to say about that? They, you know, they were just in, it was like with, what was it called? When they were, you know, they were trying to racially prove Black inferiority through science. The joke of that is that white people played themselves. Basically, all of the tests came back and it was the opposite of what they believed. It was like, you know, either Black people did better than white people or the same as white people, or, you know, then they were trying to be like, oh, well, maybe like we've invented everything. Actually, you didn't. Actually, we've been excavating Africa to find proof that you guys were stupid, and actually we found stuff that is way deeper, way older than anything in our country, way more advanced, way, you know. So, you know, at the time of her writing this book, you know, she had to name drop the anthropologist. Today, that's common knowledge, right? It's very obvious. We continue to find older and older skeletons in Africa, continuing further to prove why we have to continue to further prove this and continue digging up these bones when we already have bones that are way older than anyone else's bones, like by a long shot. I don't know. I mean, but that's white people for you. They're like, we the answer isn't the answer until we've dug up every bone in the world, until we've dug up everybody's artifacts, ripped up every temple, then we'll know what we know for sure. If it's not that, if it's anything less than tearing everything down to bag every piece of dust, white people don't believe it. Okay, so she says, now we must seize the opportunity to cleanse ourselves of the dangerous evil, racism. If human life began in Africa, then she must be revered as the mother of humanity. Acceptance and reverence of this fact will stop a lot of insanity. If you're serious about your spirituality, you will see that white women must stand in support of their mother and see Black women as their mother's sisters. Black women must also learn to look beyond the 500-year-old veneer of distorted history and recognize their sister daughters. We are children of a common womb. In the spiritual sense, everyone on the planet, Black and white, female and male, gay, straight, and bisexual, is kin incarnate. We are not that. Were we not that, we would be kin in spirit on another plane. So take the time now to give racism a dishonorable burial. Actually, it's that quote that made me so surprised that she was a TERF, because she's, very pro-gay, pro everything else, but she just doesn't like trans people. Anyway, so let us give racism a dishonorable burial. Let us starve him out, deprive him of his spirit, eradicate his name. That's all easier said than done. I don't know. I think, she was going somewhere with that idea of healing, of growth. And I think that is, that part is very true. But but giving racism a dishonorable burial is definitely easier said than done. Especially when you haven't reached like the levels of prestige that she has at this time in her life. Like among her community, I guess I should say, because any random white person isn't going to feel the same way about her, Also practice fidelity to the principle of reverence. Look around you. Is your dress made of Japanese silk? Yes. Then revere those ancestors. Are you having cornbread with dinner tonight? Recognize the work of Native Americans. Is that salsa music playing on your radio? If you just love the stuff, then salute the Latin ancestors. We can no longer afford to only be tribal. There has already been too much physical and cultural interchange for that. What we must do now is turn to Mother Earth and salute her for allowing us to live on her body. We must feed her, sing to her, regard her and all her creations with loving reverence. For example, I praise the wind goddess and the Wright brothers every time I board an airplane. Speaking from experience, I assure you that if you internalize this attitude, you will be rewarded with a feeling of never walking alone. What's funny about her revering the Wright brothers is, turns out they had a little sister who did all the math and basically built those airplanes. Like, they did the physical, but all the work that went behind it, like, they were not going to end up flying anytime if their sister had not stepped in and helped. So anyways, that is such a perfect example of infusing spirituality into your everyday life, which is our goal. Taking that time to feel, the energy of each of your items, feel the blessing, the journey it took to get to you. If you ordered it from Amazon or eBay and it just shipped from across the world to you, honor that journey, honor, the product. Like my pan drum, that's a very old instrument, or, a mortar and pestle, that's a very old, product. And so looking at the history of your items, feeling that reverence and that connection, because you chose to buy that thing, even if it wasn't particularly made by your ancestors. So that means that you're, it's like a nod to their culture. Yeah, like, that's not even from where I'm from, but it's so good that I had to have it in my life. And I give honor to your ancestors and to those ancestors for creating this that is now here in this world, spreading all of us so much joy. And then if you always have that attitude of understanding that each thing has a history, has a past, had ancestors who worked to create and perfect it, then you do walk around with a feeling that you are never alone, because that feeling of reverence is within you. You recognize the energy and power and circumstance that is within everything and weaving everything all together around you. All right, so that was the end of our little excerpt from Jambalaya. We're only reading this 2 pages from Sacred Woman. But wait, there's more. Our law of Mott today, 42 laws of Mott. What we are discussing, I will not cause pain. And remember, the 42 laws of Mott are a moral standard. It's a standard of holding yourself up so that at the end of the day, you can weigh your heart against that feather and say, my heart is not so heavy. My heart is not heavy with that guilt. My heart is not heavy with crimes, with, you know, pettiness, with going after somebody, targeting somebody that shouldn't have been targeted or didn't really need to be targeted. You're not weighed down by those things because you were able to control yourself throughout the day. You were able to, you know, there are the bigger ones, not kill people, right? Not sleep with somebody else's wife or husband. But then there's the ones like I will not cause pain. And I think this one is kind of focused on those little things that people do, because the other ones are really big and hefty. But when you think about pain, like when I mentioned pettiness, those types of things, passive aggressiveness, lashing out at people that, I mean, like, you know, occasionally you're going to lash out at, you know, a stranger online or something, but hopefully you're able to control yourself. You're able to stop typing. You're able to not shout at people. You're able to try and not be, you know, lashing out with your words, lashing out with your actions. It's those little things I think that people sometimes forget are really painful and like can cause that pain, that and all those little things start to build up. So I think when we look at this one and we see I will not cause pain, like obviously there's the scale of I will not, you know, run around with a knife and cut people. I will not, you know, do all these things, like unless of course, you know, your life depends on it and blah blah blah, but then your heart wouldn't be heavy, you know what I mean? If you're out there, like I want to say her name was Aunt Polly. I shared a picture of her on Spiritual Black Girl. Somebody shared a picture of her and I had to look that shit up. I was like, what do you mean she walked around with a knife and like boiling water in the 1800s to get slave catchers? But you know, Aunt Polly, I'm sure her heart, there is no way that there was some guilt or, you know what I mean? The moralistic standard of her going out there and literally fighting for people who are escaping from slavery, fighting slave catchers, is honorable. And so I think, you know, in that case, that's like one of those situations where, you know, it gets into that conversation about the laws of Ma aren't supposed to be only, you know, taken as literal, but they're supposed to be taken to this other level of meditation and of application to your life, in which you really think about morals, how they apply to today's society, morals, how they apply to yourself, and also, you know, the type of person you're trying to be. So focusing on not being somebody who's causing pain, whether it's like micro pain, micro slashes at people, or huge crazy outbursts, flipping tables, whatever it is you do, you know. I mean, I don't know, we all have the temper. I'm sure if we all know that thing that just pops into our mind that we do when we get really angry. Not doing that stuff, not being so frustrated that we cause pain to others, because yes, even lashing out with just the right words can cause serious pain, lasting damage, lasting pain. So that is our thoughts for 42 laws today. And we'll keep going through the 42 laws every week. The other part, let's see. We have some cards, our Adinkra ancestral guidance cards. You can get these at adinkraliving.com, and I highly, highly recommend them. Let's see. Always doing this to myself. assumed it was going to be one with like a heart because it said, let's see. No, that's not it either. It's a I'm so confused, y'all. Let me look at what it is supposed to look like. Yeah, those three definitely are good. Oh, I did see that. I just didn't recognize it. So anyways, these have the Adinkra symbols on them and further explanation of meaning, and it's a really helpful way to learn them and connect with the symbolism of our ancestors, just because a lot of these symbols actually do translate to, I mean, I think we've seen them in our own lives as, you know, African American people and people, Black people in the diaspora. So yeah, it's a good foundational learning, I think. So here we are. Let me see. It says Akoma Twasor, extension of the heart. Symbolizes, but I did think it was going to have a heart on it because it said Akoma. That's why I was looking for a different type of symbol. Symbolizes understanding, agreement, trust, and partnership. It says charter, understanding, agreement. In all agreements, ensure the terms are equally beneficial to you. When hearts are joined together, the result is love and mutual understanding. It also symbolizes collaborations and partnerships. So this would be maybe a good symbol to use if you're going in for like an interview, if you're getting like married or going serious with somebody, and you want to do a ritual concerning that. What else? You know, like a project of some sort. If you're like, yeah, opening up into a business with somebody, this could be a really good, powerful symbol to use for those types of situations. All right, so page 150, sacred silence. Sometimes we as women can talk too much. Let us be mindful of our words. Some talk uplifts and encourages, other talk can destroy one's spirit and bring harm to one's soul. Nevertheless, healing talk comes from healthy, whole beings, talk coming from healthy, whole beings can take you on high and heal your world and everyone in it. There will come a time in your sacred development when you will have purified your soul so much that you'll become quiet and still. You'll rest from talking. You'll have purified your heart. Your feelings of jealousy, judgment, anger, rage, guilt, bitterness, wickedness, other negativity that separates you from the Creator and keeps you in this agitated state, in this state of toxic talking. With time and healing, all this will wash away into a bath of silence. When I was reading this, it did actually remind me of how when I took a look at on like Facebook at the notifications I would get from people who were like not my friends, I would realize that I was like trying to convince awful people to be like good people. I was like writing dissertations like for history or, you know, for a situation like that doesn't even make sense. Like, how do you even walk through earth like thinking like that? You know what I mean? And I think that part made me think of like when she's talking about like that judgment, when she's talking about that rage, and she's talking about like those things. It can be as simple as getting sucked into, you know, Facebook all day. That's kind of the same thing where you're kind of just engaging in this toxic talking all day, waiting to see who gets canceled or dragged next so you can like join in the fun. And like, you know, that type of stuff starts to just wear you down, and it gets you caught in a cycle of just doing toxic stuff. And then you get a notification the next day, and then this happens, and then it builds off, and then now you're just kind of in the mood for some tea, and then next thing you know, like you're deep in all of this. So in the next week, when we're also talking about like physically talking less, I think choosing to be more discerning about what we post on social media, like reading it through, maybe make sure we read all the articles before we share them, or you know what I mean, like don't just go by the post, you know, take the time to slow down and really think about what you're sharing with others. And look at, you know, think about like, do I really want to engage in this thread, or can I just scroll by? And that's like Instagram too, you know what I mean? So last week, I think I said, you know, we were hoping that you would take off some of your Instagram like follower or people you were following that, you know, don't align with what you're trying to do, or make an Instagram that only follows people who are in alignment with your journey. So you have that sacred space where it's not toxic, it's you focusing on your journey, focusing on learning, focusing on, you know, having that energy all around you. I just realized like I haven't looked at the comments in a second. So here. Yes, yes, honoring the native people whose land we live on. I especially agree with that. Honoring the people who, you know, whose land we're literally on, because this was like sacred, you know, this was sacred space to so many people. It really, you know, when you look into deeper how sacred, you know, and reverently this land was treated prior to being colonized, it's really sad. You know, in our national parks that we have are basically built around some of the most sacred sites that Native Americans had. Destroyed some of them, you know, that's what Mount Rushmore is, those carvings of the presidents into the side of that mountain. That mountain was a sacred mountain, and it had natural erosion that looked like elderly men, and they called them their elders, they called them the ancestors. This was a holy site, and it was defaced. It was literally defaced. So you can still, you know, go to that national park and enjoy that space, but sadly, it was definitely destroyed, you know, just like a lot of sacred land was here. There's a few other things, like there's this, I want to, Mexico maybe, there's like a rock that's miles and miles tall, and that almost didn't make it, you know. It took like some random luck that, you know, made it so that that place made it, but at the cost of that place being preserved, they destroyed an even more beautiful national or natural sacred area. So this whole country is just full of people, full of like moments, should I say, where sacred land was desecrated, where this place was not treated with that holiness. So taking that time to bless the earth that your apartment or your, you know, home stands on, to put your hand to the earth and thank it for being here, to thank your home, to just, you know, sit on the floor and feel yourself radiate throughout the whole home, so you can feel the whole home, all of its energy, all of that. Taking the time to really be grateful for that is really important. But anyways, and then your other comment about it's easier said than done, because I know I'm like, I'm not sure what Louisa was trying to say there exactly, because I'm like, yeah, like I've been trying to bury the hatchet. The issue is like every time I go outside, like somebody has some kind of anti-blackness within them, or every time I go online, somebody's anti-black is just waiting. I want to say it was Audre Lorde who wrote about how like racism is like, it's just it always just pops out, you know. It's you're just walking along innocently, and then you brush arms with it, and it's always when you like, you're not expecting it, or you know, you're just doing you, it had nothing to do with nothing, and then all of a sudden you have to deal with this racist situation, and that happens constantly. So it does make it incredibly difficult. All right, so here we are. There's a cosmic conversation going on within you, but you have to be quiet to hear this sweet language of the unspoken. Queen is so good at this shit. Let's read that again. There is a cosmic conversation going on within you, but you have to be quiet to hear this sweet language of the unspoken. In this stillness of your inner silence, your purity will allow you to hear the language of the trees, the grass, the wind, the healing rays of the sun. I don't know if I told you this story, but I did see a video recently where there was an elderly African man in the swamps somewhere, you know, like this was where he lived, out in this like area in the bayou somewhere. And this white woman had, or maybe I read this, I don't remember. This white woman had she was journeying around trying to do something, get stories about something. But for some reason, this really affected her, because so she wrote about it, but she was like, she came at it with like a very, you know, biased view. She didn't really understand what the fuck she was seeing, but she wrote about it because it was spiritually powerful. So she understood at least that. So she saw this elderly man, and he's sitting in his chair rocking, and you know, they get to like being cool, and you know, he's smoking whatever, and they're talking, and she's like, I've heard about you, or they've said something about you, and they say, you know, you talk to the trees. And so he spoke to her a little bit about that, and basically it came from, you know, meditating out there. And one of the things that he said that really stood out to me was how he talked about that moment where the wind is still, but you can hear the rustles of the trees. He's like, that's the trees talking, that's the energy, that's all of that. And so, like I've said before, you know, there's that connection that you can go out to the trees, hug the trees, sit under the tree. Buddha sat under the tree, and it's his, you know, it's like straight up his spine. He was straight up the trunk of the tree is how this energy is flowing. And it connects your energy to it if you sit in that silence long enough and are able to really start to feel the rhythm of the energy, the pulse of the energy, and allow yourself to kind of match with that, because you're, you know, a living organism as well. Spirit and nature speak the same language, the language of the creator. As your sacredness fills you more and more, you will step into a world of peacefulness, a place where the life energy is just waiting to answer your questions and help you attain your full magnificence. Enough talking. Do a talk fast. Go within, pray, meditate. In this way, you will ignite your spiritual powers, and they will quietly impart answers that you are seeking. I definitely think that is something I've experienced, you know, especially in sacred baths. There's something about like sinking into that hot water that like smells like the essential oils, the leaves are like floating, the flowers are throbbing, and like just like allowing the mind to process. I'm always getting such amazing ideas and, you know, messages and solutions, you know, to things that I like, you know, weeks ago I had just kind of given up, like, well, maybe I'll figure out how to do that. And then I'll just be sitting there, and suddenly it will just all just start to be in my mind. It will clear, and I'll be able to, in those moments of silence, really gain answers. And I think for a lot of people who ask, you know, especially on Spiritual Black Girls, I'm always getting like, but how do I start? But what do I do? It's go within, just breathe and think, like, use symbolism, use your knowledge of symbolism. Black people are such symbolic people, you know, we have so much symbolism, you know, we have the snakes, the crossroads, the cowries, the, you know, just so many different little items and ways. We, you know, we have the herbs, we have the high john root, we have incense, we have cinnamon sticks. You know, cinnamon is a huge or cassia root too, I would say. But anyways, you know, rue, all these different little things that when we use them in our root work can create things. And I say it's like as simple as using the dirt sometimes, like like just going somewhere that has that energy you're trying to facilitate, like going to the bank or Walmart where there's so much money, cash flow, you know, going to the library if you need that kind of energy, that knowledge, that learning, going to, you know, where there's like confidence, if you need that, going to, you know, there's the energy around places. It's stage, you know, we don't usually see people clearing this energy. And even if they do clear the energy, there's still so much, you know, of that energy around a bank that it's like you couldn't even just smoke cleanse that out. Like, you know, their prosperity is around them. They're circulating billions of dollars a day. So anyways, here we are. When you find yourself quiet in a world of so much activity, the world may see you as detached or aloof, but in reality, you're within the sweet, quiet state that comes from inner listening and deep purification. That is your center. So Queen is always saying, using this term, stay in your center. This is what she's talking about. Everything is going to shit around you, but you are understanding. You're in a state of empathy, understanding, calm, rationality. You can understand where this person is coming from, what that person is feeling, what's going on, but you're in a state where you can look at the situation rationally. So people will say like you're detached, especially if everybody's like going crazy and you're in your center. But in reality, what it is it's a discipline of yourself, your reactions around you, and a discipline of understanding the energy around you and not having the energy around you totally throw you off every time, because it's easy to be in your center at your altar by yourself. It's a little harder when you show up to a party and everything goes to hell, and somebody's screaming in someone else's face, and someone cheated on somebody, and then suddenly you're getting sucked in. And so that's when it's difficult, is when especially if it's personal. I think it just gets more and more difficult the more personal it gets. But hoping to live your life in your center, that's what we're going to be trying to do this next week. It's not just about shutting the fuck up, don't say anything, nobody wants to hear about you because you're a woman and you talk too much. This is about that discipline of yourself, to give yourself that eloquence, to give yourself that poise, to give yourself that ability to control the energy in your bubble and react to a situation accordingly in a way that's not going to leave you totally drained or totally hurt. This is not just a way of like protecting yourself, but also protecting others around you, and really hopefully spreading that energy to others. If the best you can do is keep your energy, then that is what you should do. But there is a level you get to where you're able to kind of spread that energy off onto other people and have it work like a wave around the room. So I mean, this type of energy is very powerful. That's why it's one of the first things that we're doing here, is because finding that way to connect with our words and how they're affecting our mind and our body and our spirit and our reactions, and the people around us, how they're perceiving us, is huge. It's a very powerful tool, especially as a sacred woman, as somebody who's trying to work with the ancestors, having that control especially, and that puts you in a better position, I think, to be that commander of the spirits and of the energy. Is when you're in control, then you're even more able to take those steps and say, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what needs to happen, intuitively go in on things, speak out loud to your ancestors, speak those prayers. That I think is the only thing that you should definitely still practice, besides, talking to yourself and stuff, or focusing on your own appearance when speaking, use that videotaping, but practice, saying prayers to the ancestors, just seeing how the words roll off your tongue, speaking with that, in that space of centeredness, of confidence, of knowledge in yourself, of knowing, like, even if you don't know it, it will come, because your ancestors are here and there's no way they're abandoning you. They may think you need more practice, keep going. Don't just do it one and done. But, there's that knowing that you're not going to be abandoned. The words are going to come, and it's only going to get better from here. Let's see. Through silence, you'll discover that when you do not speak, your words will carry more weight and be more profound, because you have gathered energy from your power source, the silent place of inner peace. As your quiet secretness unfolds, you will come to know and understand the blessings of detachment. Through detachment comes purity. When you experience a loving state of detachment, it is your advantage and to the advantage of others, for then you have the capacity to love unconditionally, the ability to allow love to flow into you and through you uninterrupted. That is freedom. The freedom to love no matter what. When you are in a loving, detached, quiet state, know that the magical peace that you're experiencing is undisturbed by conditions, circumstances, people's utterances, or mood swings. There are many blessings that that being in your quiet state of detachment can bring. And I think, yeah, the people's utterances, people throwing shade at you, there has to come a point where, if we don't lash out every time someone throws shade, or have to feel like we have to say something every time somebody says a lie or questions our character, or, whatever, or not, at least not continually addressing it over and over again. There has to be a point where you're just confident in what you are and what you're doing, and you don't feel the need to, make a call out post or a video, or go off on somebody every time somebody, says something backwards to you. Because sometimes it's not even personal. First of all, whatever they're saying to you is a reflection of themselves. And then second of all, you just never know. Like, some people have highly personal shit going on, and it's just not worth it to take it super personally. Like, I used to take things super personally, especially online. Like, I'd be like, what? Why did this person have my name in there? Like, what's going on? Like, why even say anything? I'd be getting super emotional because I'd be like, I think it was also like the climate of, everybody getting called out and like, this person's a fraud, and I was like, wait, nobody should talk to me. Don't talk to me. Like, but at the end of the day, it really isn't personal. It really doesn't, it's really not about you, especially with people you don't even know online. Okay. But even when you like, and strangers you meet, you know what I mean? All those people, it just shouldn't really affect you. And then learning to also read your family and read that situation and not be totally affected. I'll say parents are a huge one with this, learning to not get sucked into feeling like an awkward preteen when you're at your mom's house, learning to not feel sucked into feeling, if you have a narcissistic parent or brother or sister, not getting sucked into their bullshit every time, because they'll say shit, you know what I mean? If you show up to those family gatherings, that's why people get so mad, is they're like, and then she had something to say about this, and then she had to talk about my girlfriend, and then she had to talk about my job, and then she talked about like my school, my this, my that. They didn't like how I dressed, they didn't like how I smelled, they didn't like what I brought to eat, they don't like that I'm vegan now. Whatever. Finding those ways to still be in your center, I think that's like the ultimate test, being in your center in front of the people who raised you, especially if they were a little toxic or, detrimental in some way to that growth. That's like, but not just, parents and stuff, but I think that's a really good example of, people that people just can't stay in their center in front of. And I think that goes for most humans. They a lot of people say that have that issue when they go in their mom's house. She just mocks them into the dirt until they feel like they're 12 and need to just go take out the trash and do some chores. And like, that's like, sucks that, parents will do that to their 30-40-year-old kids. But at the same time, it really is up to us to be able to control our own energy. You can't control mom, you can't control your auntie or your uncle who always has something sideways to say, but you can't control your energy, your reactions, your space. All right, we gotta finish up. My kids are getting angry at each other, or should I say my son? When people are in your life actively, you're, oh my gosh. where's my stuff? All right. When people are in your life actively and you're interacting in a good way, you feel blessed. And when it's time for them to move on, you should feel equally blessed. You're able to release them to go and grow. The gift of peace is that nothing disturbs your inner stillness. If someone says, I love you, it's good. Oh my gosh. We are like going to take forever to get through this, like half a page. Okay, this should be good. If someone says, I love you, it's good. And if they say the opposite, it's still good. Because you trust in the Most High living within you. And you know that all these things that happen to and through you are good. You have faith that things are working out in your behalf, and this makes you stronger and wiser and gives you spiritual muscle. That faith that you're building in your ancestors and in your root work and in your veneration practices and in your bloodline, and as you teach your children and all of that, that is building your spiritual muscles. That's one of the ways that you're doing that and gaining that confidence and gaining that strength and power. But I really love that part. I like that, because you have to remember, first, not everyone's going to love you. Second, not everything lasts forever. You know, it's that wiseness that comes from, that place of being centered. So that, if someone says, I love you, it's cool. If someone doesn't love you, they block you, it's cool. You know, it's not that big of a deal. It's really not, it's okay. And in your mind and your soul, like this happened to me like a couple years or a year ago. There was this couple that we knew, and I always am like, God, I like friends that are a couple, because then it's like, yes, like maybe their kid might be like wild, but at least like I don't have to worry about somebody being like resentful of me having a kid. That's what I was thinking. So I get this we meet this random couple who happens to also like to play Monster Hunter I believe we had DSs back then. It was like a DSi. We would play games, and they had a daughter and all these things. And then at some point, she just like ghosted me. Like I would just like ask her to go hang out with us, and she had me like have a conversation with her once, and then after that conversation, in which I like probably didn't give the best advice, because it was like the middle of the night, and I don't know, I probably didn't give the best of the night advice, but she was cool with me for like a little while after that. But slowly after that, we just stopped like hanging out, and I would still try and reach out to her, and she would just ghost me. She would just not answer. It was clear she was still active in a lot of things. She just didn't want to be my friend. And I had to, there was like a brief moment where I was like offended, like, how dare she? How dare this random person want to be my friend? But then I was like, that's cool. It was cool for what it was. I'll be real, we didn't really have that much in common. Basically what we had was we both liked Monster Hunter, and we both had kids who were about the same age. And that was like it. And like I had to be okay with myself and be okay with this idea that this girl who, was always at my house drinking my drinks and smoking my tree and asking me for advice. And, I think actually that probably had to do with it. One time she asked me and my husband for advice, and we both kind of failed her. But we're not therapists, okay? And she would often wait until everybody was like drunk to have these conversations. But anyways, it's just like, I had to let it go. I had to let my ego go. I was like, the only reason I'm offended that this girl didn't invite me out is because of my ego. I don't know, like maybe I feel like I'm just like, I'm cool enough. She should love to be my friend, or but I was like, this is coming from a place of ego, not a place of like understanding. Maybe it's just time for her to move out of my life. maybe it's time for me to like not be getting drunk with people like this. Maybe it's time for me, so like it was a lesson learned. And so like, yeah, it's a couple years later, I still like laugh about this situation, partially because it was like it was a funny ass friendship, it was absurd, and then partially because of like my offense when it ended, my offense at her need to, you know who knows what was happening in her life that she felt like she needed to cut off a bunch of her old friends. She cut off her man too. She cut off a bunch of people. As far as like, I heard that a couple weeks ago. She cut off a bunch of people. So it's like I'm even more glad that I didn't get so offended that she cut me off, because it's a place of understanding within myself that I'm on to better things. I'm on to new things. It does not matter if not every person in this world likes me or thinks I'm genuine or thinks, whatever people think when they meet people. And it's not your problem. It's not your problem. Stay in your center. A talk fast experience. 1, go into nature and sit with her profound quiet. Breathe in the green meadow of grass or trees, or listen to the sound of the mighty ocean. Absorb a running brook. Simply lie back and view the beauty around you. So even I would say with that situation, like when she says that, even if it's like you're like, I don't even know where I could go, I don't know what I could do, even just like laying back and having your gaze straight out the window, if it's raining or whatever, you're like, I can't even go outside, just like absorb, like have the window cracked open so you can hear all the sounds, and just stare out at the sky, stare out at the trees or out at the waters or out at the birds, the stillness, and learn that level of quiet, that quiet that's like a low murmur of energy, but it's still quiet and reverent and peaceful. Try to be quiet for 1 to 4 hours a day. So this week, this is part of your assignment. So let's start maybe today or tomorrow, laying outside and getting in that full depth, a little meditation with nature to really absorb the silence, absorb that sacred stillness, absorb the energy that still swirls around that stillness, and then try to be silent for 1 to 4 hours a day. You can try and time this out yourself. You can just, make it a conscious effort to not talk for the next hour. You just glance at the clock. Okay, like I have the ability to not use my throat, my voice for the next hour, to just simply listen and observe. Go within and experience the joy and peace of quietness. Fast from talking. And when you see a brother or sister in your travels, bow to him or to her in your silence, and from your heart send absolute quiet and love. And if they are tuned in to their own quietness, they will feel your unspoken love, for they are deep enough to respond to the voice of the heart. So, I mean, in this case, that would be, going for a walk, maybe a quick run to the store in your silence. You don't just have to be in the house, though that may be the easier place, or more convenient place for your situation. Maybe taking the kids for a walk, and a silent walk if your kids are old enough, obviously. If it's not a kid, you have to yell, hey, like, don't run into the street. If it's a kid who's old enough to understand the concept, having that silence. And if you have kids, a really excellent way to have them be able to connect and center themselves from a young age is the silent game. It is having them practice silence. At first, it's only going to be for a couple seconds. Then it builds up and it builds up. And then pretty soon you will be able to have whole moments of silence. I know this sounds really crazy. This is a Montessori method, actually. I told y'all I'm a Montessorian. It's the only white woman I stand, Maria Montessori, okay? She had the silence game, and she describes it. I'm sure if you went on Pinterest and you looked up Montessori silent game, it will come up, or Google, it will come up, because it's a very powerful tool, and it can happen with entire classes of kids. I've had a class of 35 kids, ages 3 to 6 years old, doing the silent game for 5 to 10 minutes. This is no exaggeration. And then, silent as we dismissed each child one by one to lunch. So it's possible, especially, I know you're looking at your rowdy group of kids in your house, or the kids that you know in your neighborhood, or whoever kids that you may or may not be connected with in the future. And you're thinking like, what? No, kids are kind of crazy, but they do have that element of stillness, and they do have that ability to do it. And that is one way that you can really help them learn to go in on themselves, learn to do that meditation. When you see all those kids just sitting, and like, you're like, how did they get their 5-year-old to sit there with all the chakra stones? And it's like, how? That's one of the ways. It's practice. It's starting with that tiny thing. Like, we're gonna just breathe for a second, breathe for 10 seconds together. Done. You're done for the first time, and build it up slowly every time. And practice it consistently, so they know what it is that you're doing every time, and they start to get used to it. So anyways, that's this talk fast, where she was talking about that, reminded, when she was talking about other people being in tune, it reminded me of I know a lot of people have kids, and they're like, how do I start them young? How do I, do those little things? And it's like, you can introduce them to the altar and little things like that. But also giving those tools of strength that you use, here with staying in your center, giving those to the kids is invaluable. Like, I wish I'd learned this when I was 5, who knows what I'd be on to. Go about your life undisturbed as you move within the sweet silence. Be ever so quiet. This is a place and a state where heaven on earth truly dwells. And when she's saying be ever so quiet, try and give that to your whole body. Try and walk with quiet, deliberate steps, not, barging down your hallway and you bump into this and you're ricocheting off. You know what I mean? I definitely do that. I know there are times where I'm like barging from one end of the house to the other, just bam, bam, bam. And I like bump into a doorway and I got bruises. I got fucking something from me being crazy in the kitchen the other day. You know what I mean? Like, but that body movement, it's not just about controlling your voice and all that stuff. Is make your body silence. Like, how Native Americans could walk with their moccasins and you couldn't hear anything. That's kind of the energy that you're trying to apply to this situation. Walking with such sacredness, with such economy of movement. Not a move is out of place. Nothing extra is added. You're walking and moving with deliberateness. You're speaking with deliberateness. You're thinking with deliberateness. At least for that 1 to 4 hours a day, where you're putting in effort to practice this type of lifestyle. And if you struggle a lot like me, I'm going to definitely start with 1 hour and like really dedicate myself to doing well in that hour. And trying to build up from there, see where I am like the next day. Do I think I could spend more time doing that? Do I think it was already so difficult to do it yesterday? I'd really like to try it again. Really make this your own, make it personal, and do not at all feel like you need to be at 5 hours of silence, tomorrow, just to show like, that's like how you kind of fall off, making so it's something that's pertinent to your place in your journey right now is the best bet in all of the gateways. All right, so at the end of your day, sit in silence, sipping a cup of your quiet herb tonic. Ask yourself, did I bring harm to anyone with my words? If so, clean it up. Then go within and be quiet once again. So if you can apologize or rectify the situation that you did earlier where you totally messed up and slipped out of character, out of your center, out of it wasn't you, or it was the you that's you when you're hungry, or whatever, however you explain it. But if you did harm someone with your words, try and rectify it. If it can't be rectified like that, forgive yourself still. Let it go and commit to continuing on to doing better. And drinking this tonic that I'm about to say can help. Having that breath of life, I'm telling y'all, if you go to queenafua.com and get the breath of life, you will not regret it. It is that good. Finding those little things that you can do to re-put yourself back into your space, and a space of sacred words. Maybe like using a nice natural perfume, dabbing the essential oil behind here or on your throat, so that the smell of a gentle, joyous, maybe a wise, deep, musky smell. I mean, however it is that you feel your words feel like my words need to sweeten up a bit. I put some cinnamon in your, in your tea as well. But use these different things to your advantage. Yeah, so try and make the smell something that, depending on what it is that you need to work on. We all have a different vice when it comes to our language and how we use it. It's not quite the same for everyone. So her quiet herb tonic. This is a tea to quiet and still the soul. Enjoy it during your talk fast. 1 teaspoon of dried chamomile, 1 teaspoon of dried hops, and 5 to 10 drops of valerian extract. Now, that's her tonic, and it's probably very well rooted in herbal sciences and spiritual stuff. But if you don't have valerian extract, hops, I mean, you probably have chamomile. Most people do, but I mean, make yourself a herbal tea tonic or a quiet tea tonic. Maybe even go to the tea section and find one that like speaks to you, or go to the teas you already have piling up and find one that really, maybe it's just a plain chamomile that you can sip on and really enjoy in this way and use to center yourself. This is another way, like that you can do the breath of life, but you could also just drink tea, and every time you drink the tea and you have that familiar taste, then you remember what it is that you're committed to and what you're trying to do again. Like, let's start again. Boil 2 cups of water in glass, clay, or stainless steel. Turn off the flame, add the herbs, steep 20 minutes. Drink as you quietly sit back and contemplate. The journal entry for sacred words by Ra Goddess from the Interu cipher. She wrote, "Sacred words manifest in the silence. Daughters of divinity, chant the libations of surrender as the Creator channels forth universal truth. Sacred words live in the spirit, the essence of self, which journeys from land to land, gathering pearls of wisdom and healing along the way. Sacred words dance in the temple of the goddess, surrounding raw-filled auras with infinite blessings, guiding purposeful steps that build upon destiny's path. Sacred words hear the seeds of organic fruit, nourishing weary souls with the nectar of upliftment, filling empty vessels with love, abundance, and joy. Sacred words play upon the lips of sacred women, hold the potency of ancestral ways, with enough mystical magic to heal the world. Sacred words unfold in courage, speaking the unspeakable with clarity, vision, and purpose, sending messages of honor and protection. Sacred words rest in the heart and awaken to the joyful sounds of promise, radiating light channeled from above." So this is something that she had written in her womb journal, channeling what sacred words really meant to her. And I think that is an important thing to share, just because we should really be writing in our journals this week more than any week in the previous times. So definitely go find the womb journal post on Patreon. Everything, there's a whole thing of tags, and I try not to use too many, but I mean the ones with the most are up at the top. And I know womb journal, it's in there, y'all. I'm not sure. I don't think I've made that many posts about the womb journal, because the one I made was so extensive and has a ton. There's also a page in here. If you look up womb journal in the back, you'll be able to find a whole, I think, 3 pages of nothing but prompts that you can write at the top of your page and fill out your womb journal. Make your womb journal into a little workbook of womb health and womb connection that you can really connect with. But yeah, she just meditated on the concept of sacred words, and that was something beautiful she came up with. All right, so next time we're going to talk about the transitional dietary practices for gateways 1 to 3. We're going to talk more about the diet. The diet, remember, we were trying to, so far, all we're doing is trying to cut out eating meat and dairy so much. So however that is to you, however you had to gauge how much you eat, right? So far, we're going to get into it more next week, but so far what you've been doing hopefully is gauging how much you've eaten. Maybe you made a food journal, and maybe you, like I did originally, realize you eat dairy or meat with every meal, down to the snacks you eat. Or maybe you realize you're like, oh, I don't actually eat that much meat. Like, so if you're down to once a week, I think like that's fine for right now. If you're still kind of working through those things, this is the time where we're really trying to transition, trying to replace things in our house or get things in our house that we never had before, grains and different things that we haven't tried before, so that we have those little options to make those empowering salads, to make those really, nutrient dense foods. And then like now is also when you might be thinking about putting aside some money for a blender. I know the NutriBullet is only $50 now. That's the one I got years ago and I loved it. This only like $50. It's $100, which is the original price of the other one for the Pro, which is not bad, and that's really simple. And there's like a variety of other types of blenders, but having something where you can make those healing smoothies and make dressings. Those two things are super invaluable when you're trying to eat more live foods, cut out the meats and other things. The trick, I'm telling you, like, you can make some really good dressings. I don't know why people don't cover their vegan foods with more, delicious foods, but it can be done. You can definitely make things a lot more tasty. And I'll next time I'll share with you some of my favorite vegan channels on YouTube, so that you can like start to follow people and get inspired and see about that. So anyways, that was it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I had a really excellent time. And yeah, like I said, I really struggled with sacred words last week, but I feel really renewed, and like I'm really ready to do these word fasts. I'm going to definitely write in my journal and post on Patreon, anything that might feel like it could help with others or it resonates with others' journeys. If you have thoughts, questions, want to just share what you've been doing, share that you made, take a picture. If you donate just $1 a month on Patreon, on that app, you can connect with us, write all that stuff that you want to write down. I mean, say all those things that you want to say to the group, and it can be public or it can be private for just the group, and we can all talk about it, connect. Maybe somebody else has that same question you have, or somebody else will get inspired by something that you did. So yeah, just share your journey in the community tab section. That's just for people who are in the Sacred Sister Circle and want to connect on that, deeper level. So until next Monday, may your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads. And I'll see you all next Monday.